The Rebel Capitalist Show.
One more thing on food, Chris, is if you could explain how the ESG movement plays into that, and then also the Great Reset agenda into food,
So,
the
yeah,
production of food as far as the amount that we enjoy globally today.
yeah. Well, and this isn't specific to food, but it's very important because food is absolutely critical. If you think about how you could control a society, it's information, and then it's Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's your accommodations, and it's your food and water. And so if we look at what's basically post-World War II, we had this extraordinary globalization, and it paid to become more specific and more specialized in every little industry, right? Mm-hmm. So you, the farmer, didn't sell your goods at the farmer's market anymore. You sold them to another person in the chain who would aggregate all of the various farms around you, and they would distribute to another supermarket chain or whatever the case might be. So the components of just someone growing food and someone selling that food to you have been split into multiple different parties. And so that break in that chain, that extensive chain link, is now massively under pressure. While it's under pressure, it's also being centralized. And that's very, very, very important. So if we look at much of the Western world, America is a great example. America has all the food that you guys need. But the problem is that that food is very centralized. It goes through large corporations who've bought up tons of land, who then have rights on lots of land, who then control distribution of that food. It's very, very centralized. Now, if, for example, tomorrow you could not get into the supermarket because you need some specific pass, a green pass, for example, to purchase your food, there's not a lot you can do, dependent upon where you are. And so what I've been very, very focused on is looking at essentially countries and regions that are already decentralized in terms of
their food supply chains, right?
And where it's locally grown, and where you would go and you'd buy it from the local farmers market, because to control that is much, much more difficult, because it's just a farmers market. And even if you could control the farmers market, you can make a work go around. You just go to the farmer and you buy your eggs from the farmer, right? It's not difficult. It's very difficult to control that as a central, have a central force that controls it in a decentralized food network. The other thing, we've talked about this before, if you say, okay, fine, I'm going to be self-sufficient, I'm going to grow my own food. Well, that's fine. You grow your own food and you might even feed some of the neighbors and everything else. If you have some problem with that food supply, and we're going to have it, it's absolutely, I'll eat my hat if we don't have basically food shortages taking place. If that happens, you can sit there and say, oh, I was right. Fantastic. I've got my hedge. I've got my vegetable garden. I've got some beef cattle. I've got my chickens, my tilapia, whatever it might be. The issue now, if you're in an environment where you're the only party that's done that, you have a problem, because now you have to protect it. Mm-hmm. And I go back and I think about, because I've seen this with friends and contacts in South Africa who literally did the same thing. They said, it's fine. We can see all the problems. We've got our own farm, and we connect with the other farmers in the area, and we'll be fine. Even if they shut us out, and we'll be fine. But guess what? They just got picked off. It's very, very difficult to protect a farm when you have a mob of people coming at you. Right. Very difficult. So then you have to, no man is an island. You can't be that individual trying to ward off. I mean, I know this sounds like Armageddon type of talk, but this is, we need to address these as realities. So you don't want to be, for me, it's much easier to just drop into an environment where that decentralized structure already exists as a consequence of how that particular economy works, because the risks to that society are much more mitigated. If you have breaks in that chain, it doesn't affect them as much, right? But you think about how many average, let's say, New Yorkers or Californians, if the markets ran empty tomorrow, how long do you last? I'd say it's days, maybe a week, and then you've got real chaos. And if you have that, it's an extraordinary ability to come and institute, say, martial law, emergency powers, rationing of food. So you move very quickly into a situation which you don't have a lot of control over. So when I look around the world, I've been looking for places that have that sort of decentralized food structure, where you can, if you want to, grow your own food.
Yeah, Chris, it's funny you say that, because I'm just thinking through all the time that I've spent in Ecuador and all the time I've spent in Colombia and in Montenegro. And I think about how many times I've been in towns or villages where anything you could possibly want would be grown just within a 2-mile radius. Fruits, vegetables, meats, milk, absolutely everything. And when I think about the United States, I don't know if I've ever been to a place in the United States where, obviously I've been to places where they grow a lot of wheat, or they grow a lot of corn, a lot of cattle, dairy farms. I've been all over California where they grow tons of, areas where they grow tons of berries or, fruits, vegetables and whatnot, but never everything within like 2 or 3 square miles like you see in these countries like Ecuador, like Colombia, like Montenegro.
Yeah, it's George. So, that's been the benefit of globalization, right? If you're in Florida, you got tons and tons of like oranges and citrus and stuff like that. So what you'll do as a farmer, you'll say, I'm not going to have pigs and chickens and like all of these.
I'm just going to do what I do best.
One thing. Mm-hmm. I'm just going to do that, right? And then all your neighbors do. So you just have these massive swathes of land that just grow oranges or whatever, okay? And that works in the old world, right? But so you've got your oranges, fine, but here's the problem. You're selling those oranges already to a large corporate entity that can easily be coerced, right? I'll give you a perfect example. Here in New Zealand, there's a company called Fonterra. Fonterra is the largest company in New Zealand, and they are essentially a cooperative that buys all of the milk from the dairy farmers, and then turn it into butter and everything else, and then sell it globally and sell it through multiple different chains. And you really, if you don't sell your milk to Fonterra, there's no real opportunity. Like, you've got nobody else that you can sell it to. There are a few little operators who try and do like raw milk and they sell it to the local market and all, but by and large, they're less than a decimal point. And the ability to if you're going to be a dairy farmer in New Zealand, you will be co-opted into that. Mm-hmm. Now, what they're talking about and they're bringing in here in New Zealand is something called, well, it's been in place for years and years, and it's what's called occupational safety and health. Okay.
OSHA.
So all of these farms that are producing this milk have to abide by certain standards. You can't have sewage running through your milk production, whatever the case might be. It's all got to be safe and secure, and et cetera, et cetera. Well, now they're bringing in that you need to, in order to be safe, you need to have your staff be vaccinated. Mm. And so your farm, if you've got farm members that aren't vaccinated, well, they're not going to pick up your milk. So you could have this farm, but you're screwed unless you do as they tell you to do and get your multiple jabs every 6 months, and might as well just put you up to a fucking drip and just anyways. So that's similar to what you've got in the US, and it's similar to most everywhere in the Western advanced world.
Right.
It's not something, as you mentioned, Montenegro, which is one of the countries I'm interested in, along with Serbia and much of that Eastern Bloc. They're much more decentralized. You've got a farmer who will be often growing a number of vegetables. They grow vegetables. They don't just grow carrots. You know, I went, must have been a month ago, I took my son snowboarding down the mountain, and there's down where we go, there's a lot of carrot. They grow carrots down there, and that's all they grow. So you've got these farms and just carrots. And you don't get that. So one of the places I'm particularly interested in, for example, is Costa Rica. So in Costa Rica, you've got all these tons of little farms. Serbia is another good example. I was just been researching last week. And so you've got, like, I think it's 80% of the actual, the structure of that food economy is family-run farms. 80%. So you contrast that to, say, Canada or the United States. I would be really, really surprised if you had 10% with family-run farms. So it's a very, very different structure, and it's put us in a situation of being very precarious. You're at a lot of risk to the central planners, right, and their ability to force you via certain measures to do what they want you to do. And so I want to try as best as I can to extract myself from that leverage that they have over me, because it's not going to matter if you've got millions and millions of dollars in the bank. What does it matter?
Right.
$20 million in the bank. If they won't let you in the supermarket, they won't let you in the supermarket.
Or they won't let you out of your house. You're locked in a cage. What good is all the quote unquote money?
Yeah.
What good does it do?
And if they ration food, you might say, oh, I'll pay somebody to go and do my shopping for me, and they can have a vaccine card or whatever it might be. Well, not if they ration. So you can't. You've got to try, and if you can't get yourself into a location that takes away that ability to leverage over its populace, then you've got to try and build it where you are. And so like I said at the start, maybe that's moving to a location where you have more of that, where you've got a community of people and farms and so on and so forth that are already doing that. And for many people, this is going to be an extraordinarily difficult experience, because they go, oh, I want to live in a city. I like to have cafes and I like to have all of this. We're past that.
If you're someone who values freedom. If you're someone who values freedom. If you don't value freedom, then the world is your oyster. You go wherever you want.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at the World Economic Forum in their 2030, blog post or whatever, where you'll own nothing, you'll have no privacy, and you'll be happy. If that all looks good to you, then you're going to love the world we're going into. You got nothing to worry about.